In case you were wondering, the gospel you just heard us all read is the actual gospel assigned for today, all 41 verses. And like so much of the Gospel of John, it reads like a play. Act 1 opens with the disciples' question, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Now, that may sound reductive, even harsh to our ears, but in the world they lived in, it was not an uncommon assumption that suffering must somehow be connected to wrongdoing. If something terrible had happened, someone must have caused it. I think in many ways we still have vestiges of that belief system in our DNA, wanting to have a reason for illness or suffering so that we can somehow feel like we can control it or avoid it. Jesus' answer is swift and clear. Neither. God does not make people sick in order to punish them or their loved ones. But God is present in this man's life nonetheless. And you're about to witness something about that. From there, the story moves quickly. We don't hear if Jesus spoke to the man, explained who he was, or what he was about to do. Jesus simply leans down, picks up some dirt, spits in it to make a mud paste, which he then spreads on the man's eyes. Did anyone else go, "Ugh," at that point? Yes. The use of spit and mud are not actually just there for gross-sounding details. Saliva was actually considered to have healing properties, so it wouldn't have been unusual, and in fact, it would have been a sign that Jesus' intent here was to perform a healing. In combining his spit with dirt, he evokes something even deeper, I think. Echoes of the creation story, where God creates humans out of the dust of the earth. It is almost as if in that moment, Jesus is enacting a kind of new creation, bringing forth new life, even if the raw materials look like nothing more than spit and dirt. The man is then sent to wash in a pool, and not much more attention is paid to the healing itself. The man goes, washes, and returns able to see. Now, if this were a musical, this would be the moment when the music swells and everyone celebrates with a catchy tune, but instead, here the drama intensifies. The man is immediately the subject of much attention, but none of it good. The neighbors are the first to take the stage. They are incredulous. Wait, is that the blind beggar? They argue among themselves, unsure whether it is even the same person, which suggests that they had, in fact, never really looked at him closely before. They don't know his name. He was simply the blind beggar, a fixture along the road, someone they rushed past without ever really seeing. The man interrupts their squabbling. "Hey, I'm right here. I am the man." He insists on his own presence, his own humanity. But the questioning has only just begun. The Pharisees enter the scene, serious interpreters of the law, people deeply committed to their religious tradition. And immediately the focus shifts to a different problem. The healing took place on the Sabbath, which means in their understanding that someone has broken an important rule. And the conversation quickly turns into a theological debate. Some insist that anyone who heals on the Sabbath cannot possibly be from God. Others push back. How could someone perform such a sign if God was not involved? The text puts it simply, they were divided. The questioning intensifies. Perhaps the whole thing is a hoax. Perhaps the man was never blind at all. So the man's parents are brought forward. And they, perhaps frightened of the consequences of saying the wrong thing, answer cautiously, "Yes, this is our son. Yes, he was born blind." But beyond that, they quickly distance themselves. Ask him. He's old enough to speak for himself. So much happening, so many questions and voices and people. But before we continue our walk through the drama, what strikes me at this point is astonishing is what doesn't happen. There's no rejoicing. There is no moment when any in the community pause to marvel that this man, who had spent his entire life unable to see, can suddenly see. No one asks him, "What does it feel like? Are you okay? Do you need anything? What do you want to look at first?" There is no sense of awe or celebration or wonder. Instead, there is anxiety, argument, suspicion, judgment. People seem almost irritated by what has happened, unsettled by the way that this moment disrupts their understanding of how the world is supposed to work. Now, this level of stubborn inability to see or feel, on one hand, feels completely unbelievable, even silly, and yet, on the other hand, feels way too familiar. Don't we all know how fear of the unknown is so primal that it can drive out any sense of compassion, community, curiosity, love? When faced with unexpected or unexplainable change, even good ones, we rush to reestablish order, we defend our worldview, we draw lines, we dismiss someone else's experience if it doesn't fit our understanding. In those moments, we can get so focused on being right that we stop seeing the actual human being standing in front of us. The disciples, the neighbors, the parents, the religious leaders almost become caricatures of what happens to us when our certainty about how the world works gets shaken. After questioning the parents, they return to the man himself and continue the interrogation. And he, clearly, rapidly losing his patience, responds with a bit of sarcasm. "Why do you keep asking about this man? Oh, is it because you also want to become his disciples?" He is not cowed by the authorities or by those who would poke holes in his story. Even in the midst of the condemnation and dismissal from his community, he stands sure. And he has that line that grabs me every time. "One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see." That simple sentence has echoed throughout Christian history. Some of you may even hear the faint beginnings of a hymn that we'll sing later this morning. One thing. The rest of the characters in the story want to claim that they know many things, and they want to prove that those things they claim to know so deeply are irrefutable facts. And in that certainty, that they see and know everything, they are prevented from seeing God's love and power at work right there in front of them, and prevented from being healed of their own individual and community blindness. Eventually, the religious authorities reach their conclusion. Unable to explain what has happened, they turn their judgment on the man himself. They declare him sinful, and they drive him out of the community. But the story is still not over. Jesus re-enters the scene. I've always wondered where he was when all of this was going on. Was he off observing quietly? But he re-enters, and the man does not recognize Jesus at first, because this is the first time he has physically seen him. And the story comes full circle. The man sees Jesus as fully and clearly as Jesus has always seen him. And the man is one of the few people in the Gospels who openly declares Jesus as Lord and worships him. And then Jesus turns to the Pharisees and says something that sounds almost like a riddle. "If you were blind, you would not have sinned. But now that you say, 'We see,' your sin remains. In other words, the problem here is not blindness. The problem is the certainty that they already see everything clearly. Because the more convinced we are that we have full insight, full comprehension, full knowledge of God, the less we might actually see and experience God. Not as punishment, but because we become blinded to the ways God is at work in the world. And that, in many ways, is a great definition of sin, right? A separation, a disconnection from God and neighbor. And the healing here is not about the eyesight. The healing is about the restoration to relationship with God and with neighbor. Perhaps that is why that simple sentence has echoed through centuries of Christian faith. During communion, we will sing the words of Amazing Grace. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. The man in today's story discovered that grace eons before that hymn was ever conceived. But sometimes grace arrives in ways that we never expect. Sometimes even as a miracle that looks like it's just spit and dirt. And maybe that is the grace that we seek to learn even today. In the name of the one who loves us and has given us life, amen.